Hey everyone, this is Mr. US History. Welcome back to a brand new video. In this video, I'm going to go through how I would have voted in every presidential election up from George Washington to Bill Clinton. I'm of course going to exclude the 21st century because for starters, I think it's too recent. Second, I don't want to get canceled by half of the few viewers that I have. And third and finally, I just think it's better if I go through history rather than just like the modern era. And I'm also going to be bringing one of my friends up here. His name is Ben Drucker. I'll let him introduce
Yeah.
himself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ben, and honestly, I am not. I'm going to be asking Mr. U.S. History, that's his name, who I'd basically be voting for based off of my values. For those of you guys who don't know, I tend to be more paleo conservative adjacent. So I'm a little bit more socially conservative and I'm more open with my political views. I'm more socially conservative and economically nationalist. So he can determine how I'd be voting in each election. I'll give my input where I can, but he knows better than I do. So we can get into it now.
All right, so let's get started with the hardest election off the bat, the election of 1788, where we
Hmm.
had George Washington against George Washington.
I would have voted for Patrick Henry because he was an anti-federalist. I'm kidding. I would have voted for George Washington
Yeah, this is
because
just a
yeah.
no-brainer, right off
But
the bat.
who else are we voting for?
Yeah. So, by the way, just like so we know, like around this time, actually, like very few people could vote, and I'm not just talking about like just like white people or anything
Yeah.
like that, but a lot of times it was just state legislatures that were like choosing and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got another hard election, 1792, George Washington versus George Washington.
I would have voted for Patrick Henry. Still, actually, he might
Yeah,
have been dead. Actually, I'm not sure. I would have voted for Jefferson. Kidding. I'll stay with Washington because he's the only person that was seriously running. So yeah.
yeah. And then we got this is the first actually contested one. We got 1796, John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson. How would you have voted in this one?
This one's actually interesting because I think I would have liked Jefferson's view of what the country should be more, even though I think Adams had more. When it comes to social views today, I think Adams would be more adjacent with me because Jefferson actually originally was adjacent with Christian principles, but he later became like more deistic, and he also did some sus slings with his slaves. And so well, that like I think I would have. I don't know
Well, you
you.
wouldn't really know about the stuff that
Yeah,
Jefferson did with
so
his
I would
slaves.
probably vote for Thomas Jefferson, even though I would today where I focus on social issues more so than economic issues. Really, I probably, or that's just what matters to me more. I probably would have voted for Jefferson back then. Everything was socially conservative back then. So
Also, what state would you be living in at this time? Because Indiana wasn't a state this
yeah,
time.
I would probably because of my Ulster Scott roots, I'd probably be living in like Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So, how I would look at this election is just like the main issue at this time was France versus England. And I wouldn't want to go to war with England again. I mean, the United States, like, literally just
Yeah.
finished a war with
At the same
England.
time, I'm a big fan of tariffs now, but not sure if I would have been back then.
Yeah,
Uh,
back then, like the Federalist Party was very pro-tariff, and I would have voted for John Adams this election mainly because I think he would try to prevent us from going to a war with England
I
and keep
would,
us away from the French
yeah,
Revolution. Like, I would be disgusted with the French Revolution at this point, like just all the stuff that's going
yeah,
on
me
there.
too. I wouldn't like the whole secularism of the French Revolution. Uh, so for those of you guys that don't know, I think I'll just openly state this. I'm Presbyterian, so I'd tend to be against more of like the atheistic enlightenment, like some of like the radicals, like Thomas Paine, who wanted to completely, uh, essentially, de-Christianize a lot of just greater society as a whole, or at least not make it institutionally connected to the civil magistrate. So I think, honestly, I don't think I would have supported the French Revolution, but I still think on domestic issues, I think I also would have voted for Jefferson just because he had a good track record uh, of stuff he did leading up to his presidency.
Oh, I get that, but yeah, my main issue with the French Revolution just be that they're cutting off way too many people's heads, and like just like the violence and like all that would just like. And Jefferson was like apparently kind of sympathetic to the French Revolution. Adams was much more straight about it. He was like, no, this is too violent. This is getting
Yeah,
out of hand.
I support civil order, so I might have voted for Adams, I might have voted for Jefferson. It just really depends what
Yeah.
issues I'm focusing on.
So yeah, I would have voted
I
for
don't know.
Adams this election.
Who do you think I would have voted for?
I don't know. Like, I feel like you tend to be more focused on domestic issues than international issues. So
Yeah,
I have a feeling you may have gravitated a little bit towards Jefferson, especially considering how he's more like small government. But at the
yeah,
same time, I could see you like not want to get involved in the French Revolution at all because there was a real fear with Jefferson that he was going to actually get as involved in that conflict, even though like he denied that he was going to. So I could see you going either way, but I think mostly you would have gone towards Jefferson.
okay.
Okay, so the election of 1800. We have them both here. They've aged visibly quite a lot since then. So by this time, I would have voted for Jefferson this election because I feel like the threat of war with England is kind of gone, as is the threat of war with France,
Yeah,
which is a good thing John Adams did. But something John Adams did not do good at was the Illegal
Sedition
Sedition
Act.
Acts. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yuck.
I just feel like Adams's time is kind of up, and I would have voted for Jefferson.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't like the idea of John Adams being president for any longer than he actually was, just because of the Sedition Act, which I cannot get behind at all,
Yeah.
because I'm a First Amendment absolutionist. So, yeah, Jefferson.
All right. So next up, we've got 1804. Like, is this even a contest? I mean, like Charles Cotesworth Pinckney versus Thomas Jefferson. Like, in the last 4 years, Jefferson has like got the Louisiana Purchase done. He's like doubled the size of the United States. He's improved the Navy. He's done all sorts of great things. Like, I would have 1000% voted for Jefferson. Like, no second thought.
Yeah, I would have voted for Jefferson too, even though I know Alexander Hamilton was friends with Pinckney.
Yeah.
Hamilton was establishment, so. Yeah.
So 1808, we have James Madison versus Pinckney. This time, I would actually be a little bit more like kind of like inclined towards the
Embargo
Federalists
Act.
because like around this time you're getting like more conflict with the British, especially after like the Embargo Act, which just wrecked the economy. But at the same time, I just feel like I like Madison too much as a founding father. Like the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, James
like,
James Madison was taught by my favorite founding father at Princeton, John Witherspoon, and so
Yeah.
I like James Madison a lot, because obviously he wrote the Bill of Rights. I think he had probably a good view because he was originally pro using the Constitution, but eventually became a Democratic Republican. And that's why I think I would have been eventually. I think I would have supported the Constitution after the Bill of Rights, because I would support some level of civil order, and I agree with Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, the Virginia dynasty on those principles. So I think I would have gone with Madison.
Yeah.
By the way, if you disagree with any of my personal assessments, be very direct and blunt with telling me about how wrong I am, because you know this stuff better than I do.
I mean, yeah, you're mostly right. You're right, basically. Like, I would have voted for Madison, too, this election. But now we get to the next election, the election of 1812.
Yeah, Madison's controversial now.
Yeah, I would have switched things up this election. I would have voted for DeWitt Clinton, mostly because, again, the War of 1812 is just about to happen, and I just feel like I do not want a war with the British again.
Is DeWitt Clinton related to George Clinton?
He is, in fact.
I don't know much about DeWitt Clinton. I need to know more about him personally.
Yeah, so he was like the governor of New York. He was also a Democratic Republican. He wasn't even a Federalist, but the Federalists supported him because their party was basically dead by this point in time.
Yeah.
And like he gave him their best shot to beat Madison. He was also from New York, which was at the time a key swing state. So I would have gone with Clinton this election mostly because I just wouldn't want war with the British.
Was Madison a war hawk?
He was, yes.
I don't know. Who would have Jackson voted for? Do you think?
Jackson was extremely anti-British. Like he would have voted for He would have wanted.
Yes, but what? But I don't think he was. Maybe he was pro-war.
He would have wanted to go to war with the British as soon as like 1790.
He would want to invade London if that was possible.
Yeah.
So I don't
I
know.
mean,
Who do you
if
think?
you were
Who
living
you
on the
choose for me? You
frontier,
choose.
if you were living on the frontier, I could see you being like really pissed off at the British, mostly because like they were doing some pretty kind of like messed up stuff on the frontier. So if
Yeah.
you were living there, then I could definitely see you voting for Madison and
Yeah, the
wanting.
War of 1812, to be honest, the War of 1812, I will say, I would have voted for Madison now because the War of 1812 was a war like on the home front, it was on the United States. A lot of the wars, like the modern wars that I'm opposed to as a mostly a non-interventionist in modern day politics, are foreign wars that wouldn't even touch the United States if everything went wrong in a half. So I would say, since this was an actual war, like where they burned down the White House, knowing that it was a war against the actual homeland of the United States, I would have voted for Madison because I think that we would have needed a strong war response.
Okay. All right. So now we get to the election of 1816. Like this isn't even a contest at this point. The Federalist Party is dead basically. They just nominated a sacrificial lamb and like Rufus King,
Yeah.
who's from like New York. Like I barely know nothing about him. So I would have voted for James Monroe this election.
Yeah, I don't think James Monroe, by the time he had re-election, even had any like real
He didn't. And yeah,
haters.
he ran against nobody in
Yeah,
1820. So
so he almost got all the electoral votes except for one guy who
yeah,
had to
one
throw
guy
away his
like
vote.
he didn't like Monroe, so he just wrote in like John Quincy Adams.
Yeah, what a stupid person.
So yeah, next up, 1824. All right.
Yeah, you already know.
Yeah, we all know who you're gonna vote for.
Yeah, I would vote for Jackson. My Andrew Jackson is my favorite president, so I would have voted for him quite obviously. And this election was the first stolen election, one of many. Okay.
All right, so how I would have voted in this, you're probably gonna get triggered for me at me, but I would have voted for John Quincy Adams, mostly because like again, I would have no problem with Jackson getting elected this time in 1824, but I wouldn't really want to vote for the other two guys, Crawford and Clay, mostly because Clay is kind of new at this point. Crawford is like 70 years old, and he also was like the only reason he was even nominated in the first place was because Jefferson and Madison wanted to keep the Virginia dynasty going. And between Jackson and Quincy Adams, I would vote for Quincy Adams mostly because I just feel like he has a lot more like experience. I also feel like he has more of like the right sort of like temperament, so to say. Like I wouldn't necessarily want us to like I don't know, like I could see myself just like getting a little bit like scared of Jackson when it
If you
comes
say like one more time, Jackson might challenge you to a duel.
I know, yeah. I know.
So
And that's
I would have.
exactly the thing. So Jackson was involved in like one. I don't even know how much. How many duels was he involved in at this point?
Over 100, I
Yeah.
think.
So I would vote for Quincy Adams, who's just a little bit more stable than who's a lot more stable than Jackson is. But
Jackson.
I would have no problem whatsoever with Jackson getting elected, though.
Yeah, I think Andrew Jackson was a fierce patriot. I think he believed in order. He just didn't believe in the order that currently existed, with how government was being run. Oh, and this is about the time of 1828, and I view him as a shakeup to what's needed because every other president so far had been wealthy, and this will be the same case in 1828.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, I
then
would
now
vote
we
Jackson.
go up to 1828.
Jackson, undoubtedly.
I
Come
would
on.
have flipped to Jackson this election, mostly because like I probably would have been one of the Americans who would have thought that the way Quincy Adams was elected was sketchy to say the least, and at the same time, just like the tariff of abominations, that was like I'm okay with like tariffs to some extent, especially in the 1800s where like they were needed to keep revenue for the government. But in this case, Quincy Adams' tariffs were like exceptionally high. I would
Uh,
just not want that.
Yeah, I also can't even think of that many good things Quincy Adams did. I think like
Quincy Adams'
the
first term,
Infrastructure Act. I think like I know he did
yeah,
some infrastructure stuff, but I honestly can't recall anything outstanding that he did. So
he tried to do a lot of things his first term, but a lot of them failed.
yeah,
So I would have voted for Jackson.
yeah,
Okay, 1832. You're voting for Jackson again, right?
yeah. Come on.
So this time I would have. So there would be like
You would have
multiple.
you voted for the South Carolina person?
He's not even on here because for starters,
I'm kidding. I know
yeah,
you
but
would.
I can't even put him on here though because like you couldn't even vote for him because like the only state he was on the ballot in was South Carolina, and there they didn't even like use popular vote. They just used state legislature.
Oh,
And South Carolina actually continued that until like after the Civil War. They were the last state to allow like popular vote.
Okay, South Carolina.
So I would have voted for Henry Clay this election. Again, like Andrew Jackson's first term, a lot of stuff happened. You have the Cherokee removal, which I would have been against, but I wouldn't have necessarily like been infuriated with it, mostly because like this is a hot take, but I feel like if the Cherokee weren't removed in that way, they would have just been exterminated by white settlers there either ways. I feel like that was
Yeah.
inevitable. But some of the other things Jackson did was the Petticoat affair. That was just way too much drama. That would have kind of irritated
By
me
the
a
way, I
little
just want
bit.
to point that out. That was nothing compared to today. So
I know, but like at the time, that was like a lot of drama, and then at the same time, the spoil system. I know you're supportive of that, but I just feel like getting rid of the sort of merit-based way that things were previously, even if there may have been a little bit of corruption involved,
little, come on,
but you're acting
a
up.
moderate amount. Grant me that.
The
Come on.
spoil system also had a lot of corruption, though, even more
Well,
so than the previous one.
Jackson was honorable, more so than the future Democrats. A lot of the future Democrats think of the Civil War. So
Yeah, so I would have voted for Clay also because I feel like Jackson's attempt to get rid of the national bank is a little bit too was like way too reckless to say the least. So I would have gone for Clay this election.
yeah, I would have still gone with Jackson.
Yeah. 1836, you have Martin Van Buren versus four candidates for the Whig Party. Um, I could see you voting for William Henry Harrison this election, mostly because he's from Indiana. So,
Yeah, well, I'm from Indiana too. By the way, I'm going. This is a fun fact. I'm going to the Tippecanoe Museum tomorrow. The
oh,
Tippecanoe
nice.
Battlefield Museum on my way to Chicago. So I'm recording this. This is past midnight, by the way, and I'm supposed to be like fully waking up by 8, so we can get out there and stop there on time before going to uh, Chicago. But yeah, I'm actually going to see the place where William Henry Harrison became famous. Fun fact: Jackson actually dissed him a little bit for what he called a skirmish because he didn't like the fact that his battle at the New Orleans was very at a large scale, while William Henry Harrison mostly got his military glory from like this thing which he viewed as just a light skirmish,
Yeah.
and he saw him sort of as like a Whig prop, who was just being propped up by Whigs. And so, honestly, I think I would have gone with William Henry Harrison. I don't think Van Buren had the incredible fierceness that Jackson had. I might have gone with William Henry Harrison just because I think I would appreciated having someone with a little bit more of a spine. And I think Harrison himself would have been more moderate. I don't know. I just don't. I just don't think I would
I
have
feel like
been
this would
as
have been a
unconditional. I might wouldn't have been an unconditional supporter of Van Buren like would have been Jackson.
I feel like you would have been kind of conflicted about the selection, mostly because Van Buren is literally like Jackson's successor. Like he was the
Yeah,
guy who kind of built Andrew Jackson politically, and
I would have.
Jackson
Yeah,
Jackson was very loyal to Van Buren, and Van Buren was exactly the same as Jackson policy wise. He just didn't have the same like flashy personality. So I could see you voting for Van Buren out of loyalty to Jackson, or voting for Harrison because um, he's from
To
Indiana
make
and
to make to make it interesting, I'll vote for. I'll just say I vote for Harrison because I don't think Van Buren had like the just I'll say use the word aura. I don't think he had the aura Jackson had.
yeah. So this might surprise you, but I would have gone with Van Buren this election because at this time the economy was doing really good. It looked like it would look like I
Yeah.
was wrong about Jackson's decision to get rid of
So
the
we
national
swap. So
bank.
we swap now.
Yeah, so now we swap. You're going for the Whig, I'm going for the Democrat. So I would have voted for Van Buren this election.
Okay.
All right. So now we go to 1840. I would have 100% voted for Harrison this election. The economy's in shambles. The national bank decision ended up being terrible, at least from an economic standpoint at the time. So I would
Okay.
have gone
Well,
for Harrison.
don't hurt my feelings too much. I would have gone. I probably would have gone with Harrison too, just because I would have viewed Martin Van Buren as an incompetent follow up to Jackson. So yeah, so sometimes if a president is has like a really good legacy, for example, someone like Ronald Reagan, who at least with Republicans very popular today. Like George H.W. Bush was a lot, just didn't have the same aura that Reagan
Yeah.
had. I'm trying to think of an actual word to use, not just this modern slang term. But Jackson was a fierce patriot. Van Buren, I can't think of anything extraordinarily remarkable he did.
Yeah.
William Henry Harrison, I can think of some stuff in his military career that was still, it wasn't as crazy as Jackson, but still quite honorable. So I would have voted for Harrison.
All right. Oops. All right. So next we've got the
Polk,
election.
Polk, no
Yeah.
question. Screw Henry Clay.
Yeah. At this time, I would be like, this is like what? This is Clay's like. Okay, you have 18.
Third or fourth election.
Yeah, this is like his fourth election running, and like he's also equivocating so much on the Texas issue. Like, I would have just wanted to take Texas at this point. It's
Yeah.
already happening. Just may as well just take it. If we go to war with Mexico, then we go to war with Mexico.
Yeah, we got Winfield Scott for that.
So I would have gone for Polk this election.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
Okay.
Polk should have won, by the way, all these candidates are nothing compared to Polk.
Yeah, 1848. I would have gone for Zachary Taylor, mostly like Lewis Cass. Like
I don't actually know most. I don't know about these candidates that were against Taylor, so you got to tell me about them.
yeah, so Lewis Cass, he was like the governor of. He was the senator from Michigan. He was also their territorial governor. That's really all there was to him. Like his stances on. He was just your generic Democrat for the time. Like
Right.
yeah, and then Martin Van Buren is back. He looks a lot older this time. He's running for a third party known as the Free Soil Party, which is the whole point of that party is to stop the expansion of slavery out west. But Van Buren doesn't really care about that. The only reason he's running as a Free Soil candidate is to make sure that Lewis Cass doesn't win. He wants to split the Democrat vote because he's kind of salty that he got passed over twice by the Democrats after losing in 1840.
Who do you think I would have voted for? Because I actually don't know about this.
I don't think you would have voted for Van Buren. I think you would have voted for Taylor. I think you would have been one of those guys who would have been big into like military people at this time.
Yeah, I know Zachary Taylor. From what I know, I actually don't know that much about him, but I know he was not the most competent president.
He wasn't even president for like 4 years. He was alive for like one.
I know he
and a half
died.
years.
He died because he
Yeah.
got heat stroke, whatever.
He was actually not doing a bad job until he died. Like he was like, yeah, he was doing okay until he died.
Yeah, but there's a reason he isn't remarkable or remembered by any standard.
Okay, so 1852, I would have gone for Winfield Scott.
Yeah, Winfield. I probably would have gone for Winfield Scott because I would have valued his military achievements, which is something I can respect.
Yeah, Franklin Pierce didn't really have anything extraordinary about him, and Scott had a ton of military accomplishments. I'd have gone for
Winfield
Scott.
Scott should have won. Come on,
Yeah.
you
The
should
main
have.
reason he lost was because Southerners didn't like his view on slavery, and Northerners also didn't like his view on slavery. So,
Yeah, come on.
so 1856, we have a three-way race with James
I would have.
Buchanan, Millard Fillmore, and John C. Fremont.
I'm actually kind of passionate on this one because I think I would have. I know this is gonna get me bashed on, but I think I would have gone for James Buchanan just
Okay.
because he was from Pennsylvania. I would probably have Pennsylvania roots because all from I have Ulster Scott ancestry, and he was Presbyterian too, so I might have had a slight bias towards him. I'm not sure though. But
Okay,
you
like
that.
yeah, I get it. And Buchanan's the most experienced politically out of all of these three.
Yeah, that's never been said before.
Yeah. So yeah, I could see that. I would have voted for Fremont mostly because I think at this time I would have like the Republican Party is saying like stop slavery from expanding west. I would have supported that, so I would have voted for Fremont.
I always supported the keeping the union together, so I don't
Yeah.
know. James Buchanan was a complete failure at that, but I think I would have still trusted him a little bit more than I should have.
All right. 1860.
I wonder who I'd vote for.
Yeah, me too.
I actually should give this more thought because I think I would have voted for Lincoln on the basis of preserving the Union, but I'm not 100% sure because I'm not sure if he had the same more if he was more aligned with me on economic or social views. So
So
you
how
can
like
tell me.
Lincoln, like Democrats and Republicans, when it came to economics, like the literal only debate at this time for economics was just tariffs. That was it. Republicans were saying high tariffs, Democrats were saying low tariffs. That was like
Okay, well, I don't know. Do you think I would have supported tariffs at the time?
probably. I mean, you're from Indiana, and Lincoln
Yeah.
also like grew up there to some extent. And plus, at the same time, Indiana was a very industrial state, so tariffs only help state like Indiana.
Okay, so I would have probably supported tariffs on. So I think I would have gone with Lincoln because his main goal was not a lot of was not to end slavery. It was to preserve the Union, and so I think I would have gone with him.
Yeah, I would have gone with Lincoln also. So 1864, we have
Okay,
Lincoln.
yeah,
You can see how much Lincoln is aged,
McClellan was
right?
McClellan
So
was a
McClellan's main criticism of Lincoln is like the fact that he's not handling the war well. Well,
dude.
McClellan is literally
You're the reason why.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. So I would have voted for Lincoln. Like screw you,
Come on.
McClellan.